Forget the romanticized versions of medieval life filled with noble knights, flowing gowns, and majestic castles. Tonight, we peel back the illusion and step into a far grittier, grimier truth. This isn't a fairy tale. This is 1325. And spoiler alert, you probably wouldn't survive a single day. Let's set the scene. You open your eyes, but something feels off. There's no soft glow of your phone screen. No buzzing alarm clock on the nightstand. Instead, your wake-up call is the distant, resonating clang of a church bell, loud, cold, and utterly unforgiving. This isn't the future. It's the past, brutal, raw, and reeking of sweat, smoke, and centuries of grime. Congratulations. You've just woken up in the Middle Ages. You're alive, which is technically good news. But so are the fleas. Lots of them. Your bed. Not a bed. It's a half-rotted mattress made of straw and hay. It smells like the barn floor because it was the barn floor, just a few months ago. There's no mattress topper, no memory foam, and definitely no high-thread count Egyptian cotton sheets. Just a wool blanket that's absorbed more filth than you can imagine. It's damp, heavy, and vaguely smells like something died in it, and maybe something did. You try to stretch, and instantly regret it. The air bites with cold, and your joints feel like they've rusted overnight. You're 22, but in this world, that's middle-aged. Your spine crackles. Your knees pop, and your body feels like it's been through a windmill. Every movement is a gamble between pain and regret. You sit up, barefoot, of course, and place your feet on the floor. Is it wet? Could be from last night's rain seeping through the thatched roof. Is it sticky? Could be from the neighbor's chicken wandering in and leaving a little gift. Either way, your feet are now part of the texture of the floor, dirt, moisture, and who knows what mixed into a living carpet of discomfort. You glance around, hoping for a moment of peace or privacy. Not a chance. You share your home, a one-room wooden hut, with your parents, your siblings, maybe a stray uncle who never left, a couple of goats, and a thriving community of rodents and insects. Curtains. Never heard of them. Bedrooms. That's a luxury. Here, privacy is a myth and solitude a forgotten dream. The smell is an assault on every sense. It's a pungent cocktail of stale beer, sour sweat, wet animals, and something indefinably awful. Mold? Possibly. Despair? Definitely. And there's nothing to mask it. Scented candles haven't been invented. Air freshener. Try opening the non-existent window, you sigh. Welcome to morning in medieval Europe. Still cocooned in your scratchy wool blanket, you listen to the sounds of your family stirring, sniffling, groaning, scratching. Everyone's infested with something. Lice, fleas, mites. You name it, you probably have it. Your scalp itches. Your armpits itch. You're a mobile buffet for blood-sucking bugs, and no one even blinks at it. It's just life. You want to delay the inevitable. But there's no lying in today. There's work to be done, and hunger waiting around every corner. First, though, you need to drag yourself out of bed. Your blanket clings to you like a mossy shroud. You push it aside, and your feet hit the cold, hard ground. Everything about this place is hard. The floor. The air, the lifestyle. It wears you down, body and soul. Your home is made of wooden planks, barely sealed, letting in wind and rain like it's not even trying. The roof, made of straw and hopes, leaks on a good day and collapses on a bad one. There's no chimney, just a smoke hole in the roof, so your living space smells like burnt wood year-round. And sometimes, when the fire smolders low, like something far worse, you shiver. It's colder inside than outside. Your breath hangs in the air like mist. You huddle by the hearth, if you're lucky enough to have a few coals still glowing from last night. You hope someone remembered to throw a log on. Firewood's precious, collected by hand, stick by stick. Running out means freezing. And freezing means dying. You're already wearing the same clothes from yesterday, because they're your only clothes. No wardrobe, no clean set, no laundry day. Just one rough, stained tunic that has seen every meal, every spill, every rainstorm, and every trip to the outhouse. If you're lucky, it's wool. If you're really lucky, it's linen. But more likely, it's just rough. Scratchy, and smells like whatever you stepped in last Tuesday. Your boots, if you have them, are little more than stiff leather wrappings, soaked and splitting at the seams. Most likely, you'll go barefoot. Again, someone stirs the coals and throws in a handful of dried moss and twigs. The fire sputters weakly to life. No stove, no kitchen counter, no gas burner. Just a fire pit and a single soot-streaked pot, crusted with weeks' worth of dried pottage, and that's breakfast. But we'll get to that nightmare soon. Right now, your only job is survival. And that begins with standing up, walking across a damp, insect-infested dirt floor, stepping over your cousin, avoiding the goat. And pretending this isn't the most miserable moment of your short, exhausted life. But don't worry, this is just the beginning. Let's continue your miserable morning in 1325. You've finally stood up from your lumpy straw bed. You've tiptoed around your sleeping siblings and barely avoided stepping in something that may or may not have come from the family pig. Your stomach growls, but before you even think of breakfast, there's something you must do first. You have to relieve yourself. Now, let's get one thing out of the way. There is no toilet. No porcelain throne. No flushing water. No privacy. There isn't even a designated room for it. So, what do? Well, if you're lucky, your family owns a chamber pot. It's basically a glorified bowl, ceramic if you're well off, wooden or metal if you're not. This chamber pot, kept under the bed or in the corner, is where you go when nature calls. And yes, it stays inside the house, day and night, filling up, stinking up, until someone, usually you, if you're the youngest or lowest ranking member, has the unfortunate job of emptying it. Where does it get emptied? Good question. If you live near a river or stream, that's the go-to disposal site. Walk outside, dump it, and pray the wind isn't blowing back toward you. But if you live further inland, or worse, in a city, you just toss it into the street. Seriously. Open your door, yell Gardaloo. Which means watch out. In Middle English, and hurl it onto the cobblestones below. Human waste joins mud. Rotting food, animal guts, and blood from the butcher's shop to create a sludgy, disease-ridden river of filth. You have now contributed to the medieval urban ecosystem. Congratulations, of course, if you live in the countryside, things aren't much better. There might be a latrine, a pit dug out back with a few wooden planks to perch on. It's unsanitary, unsheltered, and smells like a demon's breath. There's no toilet paper. Just moss, leaves, or if you're truly unfortunate, your hand. And nobody is washing hands afterward, because there's barely enough water for drinking, let alone hygiene. You shuffle back into the house, hoping to warm up by the fire. But now it's time to prepare the most uninspiring meal of the day, breakfast. Forget eggs, bacon, and toast. Forget coffee. Forget anything warm, rich, or satisfying. Your breakfast is the same thing you had for dinner. And for lunch. And probably yesterday too. It's called pottage, a thin, sludgy stew made from boiled grains, onions, leeks, and maybe a carrot or two. Meat? Only if something died recently. And not always an animal. Pottage is basically the medieval version of leftovers, but instead of reheating it in a microwave, you just keep it bubbling in the same pot for days or even weeks. You add a little water. Maybe a new root vegetable if you're lucky, and stir it with a blackened wooden spoon that's seen more bacteria than your local hospital. There's no seasoning, no salt, unless you're wealthy, and definitely no flavor. It's grayish, smells slightly sour, and sticks to your teeth like it's trying to become one with your soul, but you eat it. Because you're hungry, and hunger in 1325 isn't an inconvenience, it's a constant threat. Maybe you have some bread to go with it. That sounds promising, until you realize what medieval bread is. Hard, coarse, and filled with chunks of husk and dirt. Some bakers even added chalk or sawdust to bulk it up. And if it's a few days old, which it usually is, you'll need to soak it in your pottage just to chew through the crust without breaking a tooth. The bottom of your bread loaf, by the way, might be black and crusty. That's because it was baked directly on the hearthstone. Most people don't eat this part. Instead, it's used as a plate of sorts. It's called a trencher, and you serve food on it, then toss it to the dogs after the meal, if there are dogs. Otherwise, the poor might get it. You slurp your pottage, chew your bread, and try not to gag. The meal is simple, sad, and repeated every day of your life. Variety is for the wealthy. You, however, eat what's available, and that usually means barley, cabbage, leeks, onions, and turnips. Let's talk about hygiene now. Because by this point in the morning, you reek. And so does everyone else, bathing. That's a luxury. Not because people didn't want to be clean, but because warm water was hard to come by. You had to fetch it, heat it, and pour it into a wooden tub, if you even had one. Most peasants didn't bathe more than once a month. Maybe twice a year. Sometimes never. Instead, you splash your face with cold water from a bucket, assuming there's any clean water around. Rub your teeth with a frayed stick, and maybe wipe your hands on your tunic. Soap is expensive. Most people use a homemade mixture of animal fat and ashes, which works about as well as it sounds. Your skin is oily, your hair is greasy, and you're probably infested with lice. Everyone is. It's not even shameful, it's just expected. Delousing is a family activity. Sit by the fire, pick bugs out of each other's hair, and roast them between your thumbnails until they pop. Welcome to bonding time, and now, after that delightful ritual, it's time to get dressed, though you're probably already wearing your clothes from yesterday, and the day before, and the week before that. You only own one outfit. Maybe two if you're lucky. There's no concept of changing clothes unless they're so filthy or torn they no longer function. Your tunic smells like smoke, sweat, mildew, and possibly goat. Your leggings are stiff with grime. Your cloak, if you have one, is full of holes. But it's the only barrier between your shivering skin and the biting wind, so you wrap it tight and step outside. The day has just begun, and it will be long, cold, and merciless. You've eaten your meager breakfast. You've washed your face, if there was water, and wiped your hands on the same tunic you've worn for weeks. Your body still aches from sleeping on a straw mattress filled with bugs and fleas, and your stomach is barely satisfied after a few bites of sour pottage and rock-hard bread, but there's no time to rest. The sun is rising, and your day is just beginning, because in 1325, every day is about one thing: survival. There is no concept of leisure. No scrolling through your phone, no relaxing cup of tea, no slow mornings. If you're not working, you're starving. And if you're starving, you're probably dying, so you get to work. If you live in the countryside, and most people do, you're tied to the land. Not by choice, but by birth. You were born a peasant. You'll die a peasant. You don't own your land. The Lord does. Everything you grow, harvest, or raise is owed, at least in part, to Him. This isn't a friendly arrangement. It's feudalism. A rigid, brutal hierarchy that defines every second of your life. You, the peasant, provide labor. In exchange, the Lord provides protection. From what? Mostly other lords. Or bandits. Or invading armies. But protection doesn't mean safety, it just means your suffering happens under one master's rule instead of another's. You begin your chores before the sun has fully climbed over the trees. If it's planting season, you're in the fields with a wooden plow, pulled by a weary ox. If it's harvest time, you're swinging a sickle from sunrise to sunset, your hands blistered, your back bent, and your feet caked in mud. If it's winter, you're chopping firewood, fixing thatched roofs, or trying to keep the animals alive in freezing temperatures. If you're lucky enough to own livestock, you're feeding pigs, milking goats, or gathering chicken eggs, assuming the foxes didn't get to them first. The work is endless. There are no weekends. No sick days. No breaks unless you're too injured to move, and even then, someone's yelling at you to get up, and don't think your children are spared. As soon as a child can walk, they're put to work. Fetching water. Gathering firewood. Herding geese. Picking weeds. Your 10-year-old might be doing the same tasks as a grown man. Childhood, as we know it, simply doesn't exist. Now, let's say you're a woman, your day is somehow even harder. You rise before everyone else to light the fire and prepare breakfast. You knead dough, churn butter, carry water, mend clothes, sew, clean, and watch over half a dozen children while still helping in the fields. You give birth at home, without a doctor, often in dangerous, unsanitary conditions. Infant mortality is high. Maternal mortality is higher, and still, you work, because no matter your age, gender, or condition, if you're a peasant, your life is labor. If you live in a village or town, your tasks might be slightly different, but the suffering isn't. You might be an apprentice to a blacksmith, a tanner, a butcher, or a weaver. Apprenticeship means long hours, little pay, and often harsh treatment. You sleep where you work. You eat whatever scraps are thrown your way. And after years of training, you might be allowed to work for yourself, but most people don't make it that far. Disease, famine, or injury usually takes them first, and what if you do manage to make something of yourself? Say you become a master craftsman. Open a shop. Gain some respect, you still don't matter much, because in medieval society, you are defined by your class. At the top, there's the king. Then the nobility, lords, barons, dukes. Below them, the clergy, bishops, abbots, monks. Then merchants and landowners. Then free peasants. Then serfs. Then beggars, and the line between each is nearly impossible to cross. You're born into your class, and that's where you stay. Forever. Social mobility is a fantasy. You don't dream of becoming anything else, because dreaming is dangerous. Ambition can be punished. It's better to know your place. And stay in it. Even clothing reinforces this divide. Nobles wear silk, velvet, bright colors, jewelry. You wear wool, brown and gray. Nothing fancy, because laws, actual laws, restrict what you can wear. These are called sumptuary laws, and they exist to remind everyone who is important, and who isn't, and yet, no matter how much you suffer, you're told to be grateful, grateful for your place in the world. Grateful for your Lord's protection. Grateful for your one-room house. Your rotting bread, your cold nights, your aching body, because things could always be worse. You could be an outlaw, a criminal, someone caught stealing, or hunting on the Lord's land, or defying authority. Punishment is swift and cruel: whipping, branding, stocks, mutilation, or execution. Justice in 1325 doesn't believe in mercy. It believes in pain, but here's the real kicker: you also have to pay for the privilege of being this miserable. There are taxes. So many taxes: the tithe, to the church, 1/10 of everything you own. The tallage, to the Lord, paid in goods or labor. Fees for using the Lord's mill, oven, or wine press. Rent for your land. And more. Always more. You work all day, scrape together barely enough to feed your family, and then hand over what little you have to men in robes who remind you it's God's will. Still, you keep going, because what choice do you have? Night begins to fall. The sun sinks below the horizon. The cold creeps in again. Your muscles are sore. Your feet are cracked. Your hands are raw. You've eaten nothing but gruel and root vegetables. Your clothes are wet. Your soul is tired, but you're alive, and in 1325, that's something. So you step back inside your tiny home, ducking under the low wooden beam. You sit by the dying fire. Your family huddles close. There is no light, no music, no comfort, just quiet, and the knowledge that tomorrow will be exactly the same. The sun is gone now. A cold dusk has settled across the village. Shadows stretch over the thatched rooftops, the fields fall silent, and the air grows heavy with moisture. In 1325, the night is not just a time of rest, it is a time of uncertainty, of fear, of surrender to forces beyond your control. You return home, if you are lucky enough to have one. The structure is modest, one room shared by your entire family. The floor is dirt. The roof leaks when it rains. Smoke from the central fire pit stings your eyes, but it's the only warmth you have. There is no chimney, just a hole in the ceiling and cracks in the wall. The wind whispers through at night, making sleep colder and more difficult. Dinner, if it can be called that, is simple. Leftovers from the morning or a week's stew, maybe thickened with barley, onions, or whatever roots you could dig up. There's no meat unless a rare animal was caught or something was killed in your own flock, which you'd usually rather avoid. Meat is expensive, and animals are more valuable alive. Bread, if you have it, is dark and tough. Beer or watered wine is safer than drinking from the well. Clean water is a luxury, you eat by firelight. The flames crackle, casting flickering shapes on the walls. There are no windows, no lanterns, no candles for most peasants. Wax is costly, oil even more so. Darkness fills the corners of your home. You sit close with your family, not for affection, but for survival. The night is cold, and bodies are the best insulation, and so the world shrinks. Once the sun goes down, the village changes. It quiets. No one travels after dark, it's too dangerous. The roads are unlit, unguarded, and full of risks. Robbers. Wild animals. Spirits, yes, spirits. Because in 1325, the line between the physical and the spiritual world is thin. You don't understand illness. Or weather. Or why some crops fail and others flourish. So you turn to what the church and your village elders teach you, that invisible forces rule your life. You believe in curses, in witches, in demons, in divine punishment. A sick child might be the victim of sin or sorcery. A bad harvest might mean God is angry, or the devil is near. The unexplained is not just mysterious, it is terrifying. You fear the forest. It surrounds your village, dense and ancient. Wolves live there. Bandits. Things that don't have names. You don't go into the woods unless you must, and never alone. At night, the trees themselves seem alive, whispering secrets or threats in the wind. If someone dies, and death is common, rituals must be followed. Prayers. Offerings. Sometimes a charm is placed under a pillow to protect the soul. A priest may come, but if not, the villagers do what they can. The dead are buried quickly. Disease spreads fast in a close, filthy world. Speaking of disease, everyone fears the next illness. Plagues, though not yet in full force in 1325, have come in waves. Leprosy, dysentery, fever, these can wipe out entire families. And there's no cure. Medicine, as you know it, is mostly superstition. Leeching, herbs, chants. Sometimes it helps. Often, it doesn't. A toothache could turn deadly. A cut could fester and lead to infection. You know people who have died from a cold. You've seen children fade away in days, and still, you pray. The church dominates everything. There's no separation of religion and daily life. Every decision is shaped by fear of sin and hope of salvation. You fear hell more than pain. You are taught to obey the church, to confess your wrongs, to pay your tithe, and to trust that your suffering will be rewarded, after you die. The priest tells you that the poor are closest to God. That your labor is holy. That questioning your station is wicked. That your suffering is part of a divine plan, so you cling to that idea, because without it, there's nothing. And finally, as night deepens, you try to sleep. There is no mattress, just a pile of straw, often shared with fleas and lice. If you're very poor, you sleep on the floor. If you're slightly better off, the whole family might sleep on a raised wooden frame stuffed with old fabric, hay, or animal skins. There is no privacy. Everyone is in the same room, grandparents, children, even the animals if it's cold. You listen to the sounds outside, the howling wind, the creaking beams, the occasional call of a night bird. Every sound might be something dangerous. Or someone. Still, your body is exhausted. You worked yourself to the edge. And you'll do it again tomorrow. There are no dreams of adventure or ambition. Just the fading hope that tomorrow won't bring sickness, injury, or loss. That your children will live. That your crops will grow. That the Lord will not call you to judgment just yet, because in 1325, surviving another day is not taken for granted. You whisper a prayer, and then, finally, you sleep. In 1325, death is not a distant or abstract concept. It is a part of everyday life. You are born in a small hut, live among filth and hardship, and die not far from where you first opened your eyes. The cycle of life is short, harsh, and largely predictable. Yet for all its familiarity, death is never easy. When a person dies, the village changes. The church bell tolls solemnly, its echo stretching across the fields. Work pauses. Neighbors gather. Whether the person was young or old, rich or poor, death is treated with sacred seriousness. It is not just the end of a life, it is the beginning of something else. Something eternal. You do not think of death as an end, but as a passage. The teachings of the church are clear. your soul continues. And where it goes depends on how you lived. The priest comes to bless the body. He recites prayers in Latin, words you don't understand, but feel are holy. If the person had confessed their sins and received the last rites, they are said to be at peace. If not, there is worry. Fear. Whispers that their soul might be trapped. That they could wander as a restless spirit, especially if their death was sudden or violent. The body is usually buried quickly, often within a day. There is no embalming. Refrigeration doesn't exist. In the summer, the smell comes fast. A simple wooden coffin, if the family can afford it. Otherwise, a shroud. The graveyard surrounds the church, and to be buried there is a final sign of belonging, to the community, and to God. You place a stone. You cross yourself. You pray not just for the dead, but for yourself, because you, too, will lie in the earth one day. And you hope that when your time comes, someone will do the same for you. People speak in hushed tones after a burial. Some cry openly, others remain still, their grief silent but deep. If the deceased was a father, who will feed the family now? If it was a mother, who will care for the children? If it was a child, God forbid, what sin brought such punishment? Death always carries questions. And fear, everyone fears hell. It is described in vivid detail by the priest: fire, agony, demons, eternal torment. A single unconfessed sin could condemn you. But there is also hope. Heaven is promised to those who suffer nobly, obey the church, and remain humble. You picture it as a land of light, peace, warmth, a place where hunger and pain no longer exist. Then there is purgatory. A middle place. A waiting room for souls who weren't good enough for heaven, but not evil enough for hell. There, they suffer to purify their sins before moving on. People pay the church to pray for the souls of the dead, hoping to shorten their time in that place. Your legacy is not measured in wealth or achievements. It is measured in faith, family, and reputation. Were you kind? Honest? Obedient? Did you confess? Did you attend Mass? Did you pay your tithes and show respect to your Lord and to God? If yes, then people will speak well of you when you're gone. They will remember you in prayer. They will light candles for you during All Souls' Day. And maybe, just maybe, your soul will find peace more quickly. Sometimes, people make offerings to the church to ensure their memory lives on. A small carving. A candle. A bit of land given in your name. If you're rich, you might build a chapel or commission a prayer book. If you're poor, you give what little you can. Anything to be remembered. Anything to be forgiven. But for most, your name fades within a generation. Perhaps your grandchildren will speak of you. Perhaps not. There are no photographs, no written journals, no recorded voices. Only memory, and memory fades fast in a world where survival takes all your energy. Still, the church tells you that God remembers. That your suffering on earth is not wasted. That the pain of your short life is noticed by heaven. This promise, that justice exists beyond the grave, is what keeps many people going. It is the one form of hope available to everyone, regardless of their station, and so, as you walk past the graves on your way to Mass, you bow your head. You say a prayer, not just for the dead, but for yourself. You will join them one day. You don't know when. A fever. An accident. A bad winter. It could be next week, next year, or tonight. You are not ready. But no one ever is, so you carry on. You work the fields. You feed your children. You give thanks for another morning. And when the night comes, you pray once more, for mercy, for protection, for forgiveness, because in 1325, the greatest comfort in life is the hope that death is not the end. As you rise each morning in the 21st century, brushing your teeth under electric lights and scrolling through a glowing screen, the medieval world might seem like a distant, shadowy past, buried deep beneath centuries of progress. And yet, if you look closely, you'll find the fingerprints of the Middle Ages everywhere, in the architecture of your churches, the rituals of your holidays, the legal systems that govern your country, and even in the language you speak. The world of 1325 was one of simplicity and hardship, but it was also the foundation of much of what defines us today. Though we often think of the medieval era as primitive, cruel, and unenlightened, it was also a time of structure, spiritual devotion, and emerging ideas that would shape the future. The most visible legacy lies in the buildings that still stand. Walk through the old quarters of many European cities and you'll see towering cathedrals with stained glass windows and flying buttresses, castles perched on hills, and stone bridges arched over winding rivers. These structures were built to last, not just as homes or places of worship, but as declarations of permanence in a world where so much was temporary. More than just buildings, the medieval world gave us a system of governance that evolved into modern democracy and law. The concept of trial by jury, the Magna Carta, the idea that rulers are not above the law, these were seeds planted in the soil of the Middle Ages. Even the modern university system, with its degrees, faculties, and gowns, began in this era with institutions like Oxford, Bologna, and Paris. The rhythms of medieval life were deeply intertwined with religion. And while many today are more secular in daily life, the calendar still bears the marks of that religious structure. Why is Sunday a day of rest? Why does the year still pivot around Christmas and Easter? These patterns were established in the medieval world, where time itself was sanctified, counted not in minutes and seconds, but in bells and masses. Even the words you speak carry echoes of that time. The English language, for instance, is a rich blend of Anglo-Saxon and Norman French, shaped by centuries of medieval conquest and culture. Words like village, court, justice, army, and market all trace their roots to this era. The stories we tell, of knights and dragons, quests and castles, still captivate the modern imagination through books, films, and games, but perhaps the most powerful legacy is something harder to see, the human spirit that persisted through the darkness. In 1325, life was hard, brutally hard. Illness was common, death came early, and suffering was almost guaranteed. And yet, people laughed, loved, built, dreamed. They raised children, tilled the soil, cared for neighbors, and prayed for a better world. That resilience, the ability to find meaning in suffering and beauty in struggle, is a thread that connects us to them. Their world was one of community, where identity was tied to place, family, and faith. In our time of rapid change and global disconnection, there's something deeply human in that rootedness. It reminds us that belonging matters. That being part of something larger, whether a village, a parish, or a tradition, can give life meaning, even in the face of hardship. The medieval mind also teaches us something about humility. They knew they didn't control everything. Storms came. Plagues spread. Crops failed. Life was unpredictable, and they accepted that with a certain grace. In an age where we often strive to master every detail, perhaps there's wisdom in learning to surrender a little, to accept uncertainty, and to prepare our souls for the journey beyond. Of course, not everything from the Middle Ages should be romanticized. It was a time of inequality, superstition, and cruelty. But even in its flaws, it offers perspective. It shows us how far we've come, and how much we still carry from that distant world. so next time you hear church bells ringing, or walk past a Gothic cathedral, or speak words rooted in Latin or Old English, pause for a moment. Remember the hands that carved those stones, the voices that chanted those prayers, the lives that unfolded under different stars and rules but with the same hopes and fears we hold today. The people of 1325 are gone. Their names, their laughter, their tears, all lost to time, but their world is not gone. It whispers to us still, in brick and law, in song and custom, in faith and doubt, and through those echoes, they live on. In the modern world, we often complain about the weather, grumbling when it rains, sweating through heat waves, or cursing the cold while wrapped in thermal jackets. But in the Middle Ages, weather wasn't just a mild inconvenience or a conversation starter. It was a relentless, often merciless force that shaped every moment of daily life. There was no sheltering from it, no pushing it aside with air conditioning or heating. It governed your health, your hunger, and sometimes, your survival. Imagine stepping outside your medieval hut. The moment you do, you're at the mercy of the elements. There's no umbrella hanging by the door, no weather app to warn you about incoming storms, no waterproof boots or insulated gloves. If it's raining, and it often is, it seeps through your thatched roof and saturates your clothes before you've taken 3 steps. That wool tunic you're wearing. It holds moisture like a sponge, growing heavier with every drop, until it feels like you're dragging around a soggy rug. Winter, especially, was a cruel master. There was no central heating, no electric blanket, no double-glazed windows to keep out the chill. You relied on the fire, and only if you could afford enough wood to keep it burning. Most peasants couldn't. At night, families huddled together like livestock, sharing body heat beneath a wool blanket that hadn't been washed in months. Even then, your breath turned to fog in the freezing air. And frost crept into your bones like an unwelcome guest. Chilblains, frostbite, and raw, cracked skin were common ailments. Warm baths were a luxury, and bathing in cold water during winter was not just unpleasant, it was dangerous. You risked pneumonia or hypothermia, and there were no hospitals to treat either. Getting sick in winter wasn't just bad luck, it could be a death sentence. And when summer arrived, it didn't come with beach trips and iced drinks. It brought droughts, heatstroke, and swarms of flies and mosquitoes. The sun scorched the earth, drying out your crops and making water sources unreliable. Without refrigeration, food spoiled quickly. Meat turned rancid. Grains molded. The heat didn't just sap your energy, it threatened your entire livelihood, but rain was no savior either. Heavy rains could destroy entire harvests. Without proper drainage or irrigation, flooded fields meant rotting crops and starving families. A few weeks of rain at the wrong time of year could mean a year of famine. And there was no safety net. No government assistance. No food bank. Just you, your neighbors, and whatever roots you could dig from the mud. Even worse, the weather patterns were unpredictable. The concept of climate change wasn't known yet, but people noticed strange shifts. Some years brought unusually cold summers or snow in spring. These little ice ages, though not fully understood at the time, devastated harvests. People turned to superstition to explain the misfortune, blaming witches, divine punishment, or other imagined curses. Windstorms could tear off roofs. Lightning might strike your barn, burning it and your winter food supply to the ground. Disease often followed weather disasters. Stagnant water bred plagues. Cold and damp environments weakened immune systems. Muddy streets became breeding grounds for illness. Every shift in the weather was a new challenge, and yet, despite the hardships, life went on. Medieval people were resilient in ways we can barely comprehend today. They didn't have forecasts or meteorologists. They had their own methods, watching the sky, feeling the wind, studying the behavior of animals and plants. A red sunset might signal a storm. The early migration of birds might mean an early winter. These observations became part of oral tradition, passed down from generation to generation. They also found ways to adapt. Homes were built with thick stone walls to retain heat. Clothing was layered, often made from wool, linen, and fur. Farmers developed hardy crops that could survive in tough conditions. Communities stored salted meat, dried beans, and smoked fish to get through lean times. Water was collected and filtered through sand and charcoal when rivers turned foul, but still, there was no defeating the weather, only enduring it. You prayed for mild seasons, for enough rain but not too much, for snow that melted before the planting season. The church calendar itself was full of saints invoked to protect crops, bring rain, or stop storms. Faith was as much a survival strategy as a spiritual one. And so, while today we might take shelter with the push of a button or ride out a storm from the safety of our heated cars, the people of the Middle Ages had no such comfort. Their lives were lived at the mercy of the sky, watching it, fearing it, enduring it. In the end, the medieval relationship with weather was not just about survival. It was a humbling reminder of nature's power. In a world without control, you learned to live with what you couldn't change, and that, perhaps, is the most medieval mindset of all. Today we learned about medieval life such as personal activities, food, clothing, and their work. Tomorrow we will continue to learn about their seasonal life, medicine, and religion. Don't forget to leave a comment, like and subscribe to my channel, and now I wish you a good night, goodbye, and see you again.